it's gone. Brody Kostecki is the king of the mountain. He got it pulled up. He made the He is now in 2024 the Repco Supercars champion. And what a drive today.
Well, James Pavey here from Supercars.com. Welcome back to our summer cool-down season reviews, proudly brought to you by City Rural Insurance Brokers. Zach Dowdle, my fellow colleague, Supercars nut, nerd. I don't know what else to call you, mate, but we love Supercars. We love racing. How good's this?
That's fantastic, Paves. First episode ran without a hitch, and we'll keep the train rolling.
So, a four-car team, Brad Jones Racing. It's a hard thing to do in Supercars. Not many teams have been too successful with this model, but they're persisting with it. They burst out of the blocks with Gen 3 last year. Andre Heimgartner was amongst the podiums. A bit tougher to come by this year, Zach.
I mean, it's a really interesting season for Brad Jones Racing because if you look at just the highlights of their season to someone who might not follow Supercars closely and you say, well, they won a race this year. They got two cars on the podium for the first time since 2020. It's a great season, right? It's not really, though, for Brad Jones Racing. Definitely a noticeable drop-off from their 2023 performances, particularly for Andre Heimgartner and Bryce Fullwood. It's just one lap pace really cruelled their season, unfortunately. Very hard to fight through this pack when everyone's so evenly matched. Towards the end of the year, their qualifying performances started to pick up a bit more, and Andre Heimgartner in particular was able to fight in sort of the back end of the top 10. But even then, Andre, he will want to fight even further up the field, particularly after the promise they showed in 2023.
So if there are stats that paint the picture of BJR's season, you know, they were really good in the races, and we'll get to that in a second, but you look at the average start for the 24 guys who did most of the racing this year. Andre's 16th on average, Bryce Fullwood is 19th, Jaxon Evans is a rookie, granted, 22nd, and Macauley Jones 23rd. It's going to be hard to get any sort of race result if you're qualifying down the back more often than they are. So I think if they're looking at the off-season to find some performance, they've got to find some in one-lap pace because we know how good they are in the races. We know how good they are in pit lane. Unfortunately, it wasn't their year in the Pit Stop Challenge this year, but they are one of the best, if not the best, pit crews we've ever seen in the sport. But one-lap pace is really going to determine how they go next year. And it's going to be more important next year than ever because all these races, 34 races, different tyre compounds as well. We know how strong they are on the wet weather stuff. I mean, Andre's performance in Topor is the clear highlight for that team, a really impressive result and long overdue as well. This is his third season with the team as it is for Bryce Fullwood as well. But you look at those qualifying numbers and it probably paints a picture of where they went wrong.
100%. And as you said, next year is going to be so crucial to roll out of the truck quickly, particularly with the limited testing next year as well. Only 2 all-in tests allowed in Supercars next year and no private testing. So that's going to be a really interesting factor to see how that affects the running order. As you said, though, Andre's drive in Topor in the wet, that was absolutely outstanding. And, I mean, there was a time there where I think BJR and everyone was sort of daring to dream that the Jason Richards Memorial Trophy would go to a Kiwi driving the BJR car number 8, which would have been incredibly fitting. Didn't quite come off after their Sunday performance, which it still wasn't a bad performance by any means, but at the end of the day, just didn't quite have the consistency that Anton De Pasquale did in the Shell V-Power Mustang. But yeah, just a really, really tricky season for BJR, and they'll definitely be looking to improve their one-lap pace next year.
Before we get into too much detail, Zach, let's get a message from our partners. Our season reviews are proudly sponsored by City Rural Insurance Brokers. City Rural, a subsidiary of the Cowden Group of companies, has over 50 years' experience supporting their clients. They offer a range of specialist insurance from heavy industry to food trucks. They are your insurance pit crew. Head to cityrural.au. So looking across the other cars as well, Bryce Fullwood had a standout year last year. Didn't get that podium. He did get that podium this year. We can't not talk about that because that was such an impressive performance, and we can't even begin to imagine what must have been going through his head when he saw Thomas Randall hit Brock Feeney at the hairpin, because that ultimately is what delivered that podium. But we've also got to do a big shout out as well to Macauley Jones and Jaxon Evans. It's so hard to be a rookie in this game, isn't it? I mean, we saw those awful images of Jaxon going to the wall at turn 8, but his year was much more than that incident, that's for sure. But Macauley Jones as well, got an interesting stat here as well. Of the 24 guys who did most of the races this year, when you put their average start against their average finish, Macauley Jones is third, so he's moving forward in these races. He was BJR's lead car in the Repco Bathurst 1000 as well, so for a guy who's been around for a long time, he's done more than 100 races. That was a pretty under-the-radar season for Macca as well. But when you sign someone like Jaxon Evans as well, you've got to hope that you can get him into a good car that can get some good qualifying performance and get him to move forward. He was really good at Topor and home soil, but they'll be really keen to try and maximise what he's capable of.
I mean, if you're a Porsche factory driver once upon a time in your career, you can clearly drive, right? And Jaxon Evans, I mean, with all due respect, he's got that SCT entry into some places which we haven't really seen it before, which has been really encouraging. And yes, that accident at Adelaide, it was a nasty, nasty accident. Ultimately ruled him out of the final race of the year on the Sunday. But in saying that, I still think there's definitely a lot of potential there for Jaxon. And you can say that there were flashes of potential across all 4 BJR cars throughout the year. Macca's drive at Bathurst, really under the radar, but just rock solid, didn't really put a foot wrong. And I think a lot of people forget that this is a guy who, if it wasn't for some awful luck throughout the 2018 season, he would have been the Super 2 champion. So he can drive. And then Bryce's podium in Tasmania, as you said, there was a bit of luck there, no doubt, but you have to be in the position to capitalise on that. And Bryce was on that day and he was charging forward. He did have genuinely good pace. He wanted to capitalise on it for the rest of the year. Didn't quite eventuate that way, but again, there's signs there for Brad Jones Racing to, I guess, carry the momentum into 2025, which they're all going to be looking to do as well, because obviously it's going to be all important to be in that top 10 after the Repco Bathurst 1000 to get into the finals for next year. So, they're going to be pushing to get in that 10 for sure.
We talk about the finals, and when you've got 4 cars, the numbers are kind of on your side, performance willing, but Heimgartner at minimum in the finals would be the ultimate goal for that team. But you look at Bryce's performance at certain stages of the year, who knows what Macca and Jaxon will be able to do if they can get their qualifying right. But at minimum, surely Heimgartner in the finals is the 2025 goal for BJR.
I think Andre's established himself as the team leader. There's no doubt. We've seen that at his highest peak, he is near untouchable on his day, especially in the wet conditions where he's really established himself as one of the wet weather masters. I think the key for Andre is just to have a bit more consistency. He doesn't have to reach the same ceiling, but if he can finish on the podium a bit more regularly, I think that'll really help him out in the run for finals next year. And I mean, even Bryce as well. He finished 11th in the standings last year. So if he can have that some sort of a same level of performance as he did last year, then there's no reason to suggest that Bryce can't challenge for finals next year either.
You raise a good point there. I'm not a meteorologist. It's a tough word, but I'm not a meteorologist, Zach. And if there is a bit of rain around in Sydney, who knows? I mean, Andre got that pole there in 2020 with Kelly Racing, and also got one in 2023 with BJR as well. And they were quick out of the blocks at that super test in 2023 as well. So who knows what BJR could achieve next year. It's going to be a huge year for that team, our favourite Sons from Albury. You can hear more about BJR and other teams in our Summer Cool Down Lap series, brought to you by City Rural Insurance Brokers.